walk through the fire, His name lifted higher. Nothing can ever separate us from the love of God. Those not awaken, whose faith may shaken, and only through Jesus is free. Eternity stay. Even when everything's crumbling, don't give up. Fight to hold on. We must ignore the forces that come for surrender. It's always darkest just before dawn. Even when your heart is tired and broken, we have a Redeemer who loves us, protects us as we walk through the fire. His name lifted higher. Nothing can ever separate us from the love of God. Those not awaken, whose faith may be shaken, only through Jesus is free. Eternity, chaos, distractions, corruption, fear, rejection, and panic, the reckoning is here. Manufactured divisions, the enemies within, evil exposed and down with winds. We walk through the fire, His name lifted higher. Nothing can ever separate us from the love of God. Who's not awaken, whose faith may be shaken, only through Jesus is free. Eternity, walk through the fire.
Welcome, this is Bill Donahue with Discerning Truths, where we talk about Jesus and other things. Right now, I'm in the book of Daniel. On Mondays and Wednesdays, I teach through a book of the Bible. On Fridays, I teach about things that I don't think you'll ever get taught in church. You know, we did the 3 views on the millennium last Friday. 2 weeks ago, I talked about the new perspective on Paul, what I think it gets right, what I think it gets wrong, those kind of things. So they're related to Christianity, sometimes only barely, but Fridays can be a little different. But Mondays and Wednesdays, I try to stick in a book of the Bible. And then I had to change the days I meet with Neil because I wanted to join another outrigging canoe group, okay, which meets in the mornings, and they meet Tuesdays and Thursdays. I'm already doing outrigging canoe paddling, or Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Sundays, and I already do it Monday, Wednesday, and Saturday. I wanted to increase my exercise routine because I let myself get bigger than I want to be, and I want to be trimmed down and get in better shape. And in the 3 months of doing it 3 days a week has really made a difference. So I'd like to do it 6 days a week. So this week I'm going to be out at Neo on Wednesday, and we will talk to you about that. But with that, let's get into the book of Daniel. And I always try to do these introductions into each chapter so you know what's going on. And so yeah, as I explained earlier, the book of Daniel is not arranged in a strict chronological order. It follows thematic structures. This is common in ancient literature, and it's divided into 2 sections. Chapters 1 to 6 are generally court tales. There is a vision in there, but they're mostly court tales, right? And it's to emphasize God's sovereignty over earthly kings and the faithful of Daniel and his friends in the face of adversity. Chapter 7 to 12 generally are apocalyptic visions. Now, apocalypse just means the end. So apocalyptic are things about the end, but apocalyptic literature is there's a lot of apocalyptic literature, a lot that survived from, especially in the Second Temple period, where there's usually an celestial guide, like an angel, that explains stuff. A lot of the visions involve cosmic disturbances and like wars and dragons and all kinds of fantastical imagery. And then often, like when we looked at the in the Septuagint version of the book of Esther, there is a prologue to Esther, which has an apocalyptic dream, and there's an epilogue to Esther, which has the explanation of the dream. And the prologue is all this fantastical imagery. In the epilogue, it's pretty mundane stuff that's being described, and that's common in apocalyptic literature. So we're trying to use that, and that's how apocalyptic literature is understood. So when we're going through Daniel and these apocalyptic visions, we're trying to use that methodology, right? But one of the problems you have here in Daniel in figuring out the chronology is he bounces back and forth between time frames to keep this thematic structure, right? And he's going between things that happen and visions that occurred when Belshazzar was a Babylonian king, or Darius the Mede, and you go, and who the heck is Darius the Mede? Because Cyrus the Great conquered Babylon. Who's Darius the Mede? Is that another name for Cyrus? What's happening here? Is Darius a subordinate of Cyrus? We just don't know. And it gets a little more confusing. And so what's happening here is you then, as you're moving through this thematic structure in chronology, I laid it out here for you to try to help, right? These chapters progress through historical events in Daniel's life, but they're grouped thematically around trials in foreign courts, okay? Courts meaning king's courts, not like courts of law, okay? Chapter 1, it's set in the 3rd year of Jehoiakim, the king of Judah. So this is about 605 BC. I told you with any ancient dates, there are approximations, okay? People that start telling you things happen on April 1st, 605 BC or whatever, just understand it's not that easy to reconcile calendars, but this is a pretty well-established date. Chapter 2 has the 2nd year of Nebuchadnezzar. That's the king that conquered Judah and took Jehoiakim as prisoner. This is about 603 BC. And it involves the king's dream of the statue with the 4 metals, right? In Daniel 2. In chapters 3 and 4, they're undated, but definitely during Nebuchadnezzar's reign. So sometime between 605 and 562 BC, right? And it covering a fiery furnace and the king's humbling. And so that goes from Daniel 3:1 to 4:1. Weird chapter break there, right? The first verse in chapter 4 belongs in chapter 3. Chapter 5 is the final night of Belshazzar, okay? So this is about 539 BC, and the writing on the wall. And Babylon falls to Darius the Mede. Actually, we know it fell to Cyrus the Great, so we're going, okay, is Darius Cyrus's guy, or is that like a throne name for Cyrus? And that gets you from 5:1 and then all the way to 30 and 31. And chapter 6 immediately follows under Darius the Mede. So we're now in like 539 to 538 BC with Daniel in the lion's den. And you're going, okay, so we are kind of following a chronology. Then you get to the next chapter, and this happens, right? You start in chapter 7 to 12, right? And these visions start bouncing around. And Daniel gives you specific dates when he got them. Chapter 7 happened in the 1st year of Belshazzar. So we went back to 553 BC. We were just in 539. You know what happened, right? So this is before. Chapter 7 is before, chronologically, chapters 5 and 6. Then you get to chapter 8, you're in the 3rd year of Belshazzar, so 2 years later, or 3 years later, 551 BC, right? And then you get to chapter 9, it's the first year of Darius the Mede, so we're back in 538 BC again, okay? And it's after chapters 5 and 6, but still in 538. And then chapters 10 and 12 is the third year of Cyrus the Persian, okay? So is this 536 BC? You know, and we have this conflicting names. Is it Cyrus the Persian, Darius the Mede? Who's ruling the empire at this point? Okay, so this non-linear arrangement, it's widely recognized in scholarly literature as intentional, serving to contrast human kingdoms narratives with God's eternal kingdom, his visions. For instance, the visions in chapter 7 and 8 occurred during Belshazzar's reign before Babylon falls in chapter 5. While chapter 9 returns to Darius' time post-fall, and chapter 10 to 12 refer to Cyrus, if Cyrus is somebody different than Darius, or are they two names for the same person? Like, you know, we have this a lot in the New Testament, where people are called by multiple names, and it really adds confusion. And this has confused scholars. Some scholars think Darius the Mede was this guy Ugbaru. He's a subordinate of Cyrus, who led the Cyrus the Great left to manage Babylon like a governor. The Nabonidus Chronicle, which is the primary Babylonian source, records that Ugbaru, a Gutian, possibly a Median allied, general, led Cyrus's forces into Babylon without battle on October 12, 539 BC. Again, October 12th dates, these are somebody speculating beyond what the records show. Other scholars suggest that Darius the Mede was Cyaxares II, a Median co-ruler with Cyrus. And the Xenophon Cropadia, it's a Greek source about Babylon, describes Cyaxares II as a Median king was Cyrus's uncle. Cyrus conquered Babylon as his generals and then married the daughter, inheriting the throne in 537 BC. That fits Daniel 6:28, right? And you're going, okay, so does this match? This kind of matches the story. And then as successive and concurrent reigns, in Berosus, a Babylonian historian, cited by Eusebius is the early church father, and a Harpocratian, both mention Darius before Darius the First. Darius the First lives after Daniel. Cannot be who Daniel's talking about, unless, and this is one reason critics claim Daniel was written later. They think Daniel, the author of Daniel, wrote later and conflates Darius and Cyrus. I accept the Bible is true, that Daniel wrote Daniel, right? But this is the reasons that there. So in the Xenophon's account, it aligns with Daniel on details like Gobrias or Ugbaru. See, there's two different names for that guy. And Cyrus, non-hostile Median ties. Okay? It agrees on his age at 62, and the Median descent matches. However, Herodias and Nabonidus Chronicle depicts Cyrus conquering Media independently in 553 BC, deposing Astigarchus, not Cyaxares II, and some dismiss the Xenophon as semi-fictional. This is why I try to stress with you, when people tell you the Bible's wrong because it conflicts with history, right? A lot of times history conflicts with history because you have conflicting accounts. And I'm not going to assume the Bible's incorrect. I'm going to assume some of those historical things are incorrect. Or the explanation that I think makes the most sense is that Cyrus the Great and Darius the Mede are the same person, with Darius as a throne name or title, meaning he who holds firm. Okay? Cyrus's mother was a Median. She is the daughter of Astyages, allowing the Mede designation, okay, in Daniel 5:28. And then Cyrus was approximately 62 in 539 BC, and that aligns with Daniel 628, and that can translate as Darius, that is Cyrus, per Aramaic grammar. Okay, that was the verse where both Darius and Cyrus were listed, and you're going, okay, well that sounds like they're two different people, but the Aramaic grammar allows for that to say Darius, that is Cyrus, which would clear up the issue for us, right? And identify that we're talking about the same thing. Herodias and the Xenophon note Cyrus's dual Median and Persian heritage. In cuneiform inscriptions, call him the king of the Medes, right? So whichever resolution proves out to be true, right? Babylon fell in the exact year that God predicted. It says what I want to get you to. I believe the Bible is accurate. Babylon fell exactly as God predicted in the year he predicted, but that we don't have all the data that we can point to and go, look, I have exact proof of God fulfilling prophecy right here, right? It's just not there. So with that, we're going to start in Daniel 9, 1 and 2. It says, in the first year of Darius, the son of Ahasuerus, by descent a Mede, who was made king over the realm of the Chaldeans, that's Babylon, in the first year of the reign, I, Daniel, perceived in the books the number of years that according to the word of the Lord to Jeremiah the prophet must pass before the end of the desolations of Jerusalem, namely 70 years. So Daniel's back studying the prophet Jeremiah, and he says, I interpret Jeremiah 25, 11 and 12 as meaning 70 years after Jerusalem falls, we're going to be restored. And Jeremiah says, this whole land shall become a ruin and a waste, and these nations shall serve the king of Babylon 70 years. And then after 70 years are completed, I will punish the king of Babylon. And in Jeremiah 29:10, for thus saith the Lord, when 70 years are completed for Babylon, I will visit you, and I will fulfill to you my promise and bring you back into this place. Okay, seems pretty clear. Jeremiah has said it's going to be 70 years. Daniel reads it. He goes, hey, we're about at 70 years, right? I believe it's time for the restoration. So assuming that all the historical dates are correct, and they're pretty close, right? I mean, we think there's a lot of aligning data that seems to support these dates. If Jerusalem fell in 605 BC and Babylon fell in 536 BC, then this first year of Darius runs from 69 to 70 years after the fall of Jerusalem. Okay? Depending on the month and the year, which matches the timeline of 70 years. Okay? So that's pretty exacting. Now, I can't tell you that to the exact day it was fulfilled. I believe it was to the exact day, exactly as God mentioned, but I can't show you that in Scripture. All right? Excuse me. I got a computer screen shutting down on me. So, and then Daniel 9:3 to 11, it says, then I turned my face to the Lord, seeking him by prayer and pleased with mercy and fasting in sackcloth and ashes. And I prayed to the Lord my God and made confession, saying, O Lord, my great and awesome God, who keeps the covenant and steadfast love, and those who love him and keep his commandments, and who have sinned and done wrong and acted wickedly and rebelled, turning aside from your commandments and rules, we have not listened to your servants and prophets, who you spoke of in the name of to our kings, our princes, or to our fathers, and to all the people in the land. To you, O Lord, belongs righteousness, but to us open shame. As at this day the men of Judah, the inhabitants of Jerusalem, and to all of Israel, those who are near and those who are far away, in all the lands to which you have driven them, because of the treachery that they have committed against you. To us, O Lord, belongs open shame, to our kings and our princes and to our fathers, because we have sinned against you. To the Lord our God belong mercy and forgiveness, and we have rebelled against him and not obeyed his voice of the Lord my God by walking in his laws. which he set before us as by his servants and prophets. All Israel has transgressed your law and turned aside, refusing to obey your voice. And the curse and the oath that are written in the law of Moses, the servant of God, have been poured out upon us because we have sinned. Now, this is going to continue to verse 19, but I couldn't get it all in one thing. You can see Daniel starting his confession. This is a prayer to God, and he's laying out to God. You punished us because we are guilty. We broke all your commandments. We did all this stuff. There's nothing unjust about God's punishment and sending them into Babylon. And that's how he's starting his plea to God, saying, look, I'm not disputing that you should have sent us in here, right? He, God, has confirmed his words, which he spoke to us against our rulers, who ruled us by bringing us into great calamity. For under the whole heaven there has not been done anything like that was done against Jerusalem, as is written in the law of Moses, and this calamity came upon us. Yet you have not entreated the favor of the Lord God, turning from our iniquities and gaining insight by your truth. Therefore the Lord has kept ready the calamity and has brought it upon us. And the Lord our God is righteous in all the works that he has done, and we have not obeyed his voice. And now the Lord God has brought your people in out of the land of Egypt in a mighty hand, and made his name for yourself. As the day we have sinned, we have done wickedly. O Lord, according to all your righteous acts, let your anger and your wrath turn away from your city, Jerusalem, your holy hill. Because of our sin and for the iniquities of our fathers, Jerusalem and your people have become a byword among all who are around us. Now, therefore, O our God, listen to the prayer of your servant and to his pleas for mercy. And for your own sake, O Lord, make your face shine upon the sanctuary which is desolate. O my God, incline your ear, open your eyes, and see the desolation and the city that is called by your name. For we do not present our pleas before you because of our righteousness, but because of your great mercy. O Lord, hear. O Lord, forgive. O Lord, pay attention and act. Do not delay for your own sake. O my God, because your city and your people are called by your name. Look at Daniel's argument. He's saying, God, I'm not asking you to save us because we're good. We're evil. We've done every evil stuff. And if you've read much of the Old Testament or been with me in much of our studies, they did some evil things, and God judges them for it. I mean, the book of Judges is one dark book, right? It talks about some stuff that went on during the period of the Judges. And it's horrific, the things the Jews did. And Daniel is confessing this and saying, we did all this. You were 100% right for judging us. But I'm asking you, this is your land, your holy hill, your temple. We are called your people. For the sake of your name, show mercy, right? And while I was speaking and praying and confessing my sin and the sin of my people, Israel, and presenting my pleas before the Lord God and for the holy hill of my God, while I was speaking in prayer, the man, Gabriel, whom I had seen in a vision at first, came to me in a swift flight at the time of the evening sacrifice, and he made me understand, speaking things to Daniel and saying, O Daniel, I have come now to give you insight and understanding. At the beginning of your pleas, a word went out, right? And a word went out, and I have come to tell it to you. For you are greatly loved. Therefore consider the word and understand the vision. So what's here, you got this confessional prayer that Daniel has been praying for weeks, okay? And it includes curses and restoration promises. He's alluding back to like Leviticus 26, verses 39 to 42. And those of you who are left shall rot away in your enemies' lands, because of their iniquity. And if they confess their iniquity and the iniquity of their fathers, then I will remember the covenant. So that's what Daniel's doing. He's confessing the iniquity of them and their fathers. This is seen in Daniel's collective confession. We are guilty. We have sinned and done wrong and acted wickedly and rebelled. And we have not listened to your servants and prophets. Daniel's a faithful man, but he's understanding it's a collective thing, right? And he's asking God to remember mercy despite their deserved desolation. Scholars interpret this as Daniel invoking Leviticus in Sabbatical and Jubilee frameworks, which you're going to find in Leviticus chapters 25 and 26. I may do Leviticus. I mean, I'll eventually do all the books in the Bible. It's just, I spent a year in Isaiah, and in Leviticus, maybe that same length of study again, and I've been postponing it, but there's a lot in Leviticus that helps us understand what's going on. And is to explain this prolonged exile and atonement for covenant violations, okay? Not keeping the Jubilee years is one of them. So what Daniel has done is he's linking this punishment in Babylon to Jeremiah's 70-year prophecy. And he's tying it to 2 Chronicles 36:21 and Deuteronomy chapters 28 to 30. All this intertextuality that I keep talking to you about. This is happening in this prayer. And from here, let me just make sure I get the right slide. Yeah, I want to make sure I grab the right one. Daniel 9's prayer alludes to a communal laments in the Psalms. He's going to draw from pieces of the Psalm in this prayer, right? Themes of suffering and collective guilt to console the persecuted community. It's telling, we did this. We brought this on ourselves. In Daniel 9:5, we have sinned and we have done wickedly. That echoes right out of Psalm 106:6. Both we and our fathers have sinned. We have committed iniquity and done wickedness. He's reworded it, but it's the same thought, right? And then linking exile into historic failures, right? And then Psalm 79 alludes to sin is alluded to in motifs of desecrated sanctuary, right? And pleas for vengeance that you see here. So in Daniel 9:16 to 17, paralleling Psalm 79 1 to 5 on defiled inheritance, right? And divine anger. These allusions function poetically to provide comfort through familiar worship language amid crisis. This is what Daniel's trying to do. He's begging to God for forgiveness, but this language is also to provide comfort, to tell the people here in Daniel's day, we got this judgment because we deserved it, right? But the same God that judged us promised to redeem us, right? And this vision, which comes in Daniel 9:24 to 27, which is what most people study in Daniel chapter 9, plus the oddly placed chapter and verse breaks, is going to make this chronology even harder to follow, okay? Because that vision that's going to get inserted here in 9:24 to 27, and I need all of Wednesday just to discuss it. This, what Daniel's doing right here in verse 23, continues in chapter 10, verse 1. Okay, it makes this a little different. But I want you to get this. It'll become clear in chapter 10 that this Gabriel, that he says the man Gabriel showed up to him, the one that he saw in the original vision, he comes back. And Gabriel says, I was sent out when you started praying. And in chapter 10, he goes, but I was held up 3 weeks by the prince of Persia. There's no human prince going to stand in the way of an angel. He has no power to do it and do that. This is talking about a celestial being, a prince of Persia. And a celestial being is powerful enough that Gabriel couldn't overpower him alone. Michael, the archangel Michael, has to come help Gabriel. And he continues fighting the Prince of Persia while Gabriel brings this message to Daniel. And then Gabriel tells Daniel in chapter 10, I'm going to go back and I'm going to help Michael, and we're going to defeat the Prince of Persia. But that doesn't going to make everything wonderful, because behind him is coming the Prince of Grecia. And that's Alexander is going to defeat the Medo-Persian Empire and take it over. And that's what's going on. But it's just by breaking this up thematically, it makes it very difficult when we want to rearrange it back into a chronological order. And like I said, I've complained about the chapter and verse breaks many, many times. They were added many centuries after the Bible was written, and some of them, I don't know, I think they were drunk when they did it. Sometimes there's a chapter and verse break that it starts the next chapter with therefore or wherefore. I mean, therefore, wherefore is telling you, I'm offering you the conclusion to what I just said, right? Why would that be in the next chapter instead of the same chapter? This is actually going to break, insert a vision in the middle of it, and then continue in chapter 10. So I know this gets confusing, but I had to get through this because I can't do this and the highly controversial verses of Daniel 9:24-27, which are the 70-week prophecy, in one study. So with that, it is my practice when I get done with what I want to cover in the study, as I put on a song, I'm going to go try to read the various chats, and then I'm going to come back to you and talk to you, and I'll see if there's anything in the chat that I need to respond to or I should, and I will come back here and do it. And what? I've been playing these a lot. What do we play? How about Psalm 51? This is Michael Beatty from California, my good friend. He did a kind of a rock and roll interpretation of Psalm 51, and I really like it. I don't think you'll ever hear this played in a church. I'll be back after this song. Okay, we're back. I seen a comment earlier that my volume is low. Let me move my mic over a little bit. I apologize. I didn't see it till late, or I'd adjust it earlier. And then a question came in, and I didn't take time to really explain this. But yeah, when Daniel calls Gabriel a man, it means that he's seeing him in kind of the form of a man. Now, from our description earlier, he doesn't look like an ordinary man, right? You know, he's got shiny skin, and you know, he's definitely not going to blend in society as a man. But he's seeing him in that form. Sometimes angels show up, and they're the way they look is nothing like a human. You know, like cherubim have four faces: a man, an ox, an eagle, right? You know, they're there. Seraphim, the name comes from a burning serpent, and they're often pictured as a serpentine figure that's on fire. That's not going to look like a man in any kind of description, but that's what's going on here. Gabriel has a lot of the attributes, has hands and face like we would expect from a man. So yeah. And then you're going to get this guy in this vision, a man clothed in linen. And a lot of times when that shows up, the man clothed in linen, it's the pre-incarnate Christ. It's the second person of the Trinity in that vision. And you see that, and we had him already here in twice. But in Daniel 10, he's going to describe Gabriel as a man clothed in linen. And you're going to go, wait a second, now I'm confused. Who are we talking about? And then there was a comment about that the Old Testament and dates and that and ages really get confusing, and it is. It's very hard to do, especially we have an added layer of confusion because when you compare the Masoretic text that most of our Bibles are translated from and the Septuagint, which the earliest manuscripts of the Bible that we have, like Codex Vaticanus, Sinaiticus, those kind of codexes, the 3rd, 4th century versions of Bible, use a Septuagint version of the Old Testament, a Greek translation that was made 200 to 300 years before Jesus was born. And what do you call it? They're in there. The ages of the patriarchs in Genesis 5 and 11 or 13, the different genealogies in there, they're different. I mean, it's like 100 years per person and 50 years on some of them. It adds up to quite a big difference in chronology. So you have that problem. And then without using any reference other than the Bible, I can show you that there's breaks in the genealogies, where somebody who's a grandson or a great-grandson is called the son, or so-and-so begat so-and-so. And it is not his son, it's his grandson in a genealogy. Well, that makes using those genealogies for a chronology gets to be difficult, right? Because they're imperfect. Not that the Bible's imperfect. They weren't meant to be like Ancestry.com, right? That's not their goal. In fact, Matthew in his genealogies, when he set them up for the genealogy of Jesus, he's intentionally tying Jesus to David. The Hebrew letters that make up the name David, right, add up to 14. So Matthew creates 3 groups of 14. Okay? He puts David in 2 of those groups. So there's not even 42 names, right? There at 14, 28, 42, there's 41 names in 3 groups of 14 because David's used twice. So the whole idea that the genealogy is to tie Jesus to David, not to be an Ancestry.com type genealogy. And this is a problem. When we come in and we try to read the Bible like it's a 21st century document and not understand it's written the way they wrote stuff in the 1st century, or that things that were written by Moses and that are written, in the 12th or 15th century BC, and according to that standard. And when we do that, we come to all kinds of errors and conclusions and mistakes in the Bible. So I'm trying to affirm for you guys that the Bible is accurate, but it has to be read in the context it was written and allowed to use all the compositional devices that were used by writers of their day. And when you do that, I have big, thick books of what are called Bible difficulties. And a lot of those, there would still be some, but a lot of them will just go away if you just read the Bible in the context of the history it was written in. So with that, we're good. So this is going to be a little shorter. I'm going to get out of here early today. I'll be back. Oh, let me do my introduction. My outroduction now, right? It used to be my introduction, but I used to start with this. But if you're new here, I broadcast on I started out as Donahue Papa because my son made up all my online presence. I was like the old analog guy that didn't use the computer to go, even though I built computer networks, it was not there. So my son created my social media accounts, and I'm Donahue Papa in our family because there's multiple papas, right? So I'm Donahue Papa, and that's the way I went online. So on D Live and Rumble and X, and when I first came to Foxhole, I opened a Donahue Papa account, and it was FUBAR. I messed it up so bad, it was not recoverable. So when Methods helped me, and we fixed it by just starting over, and I became Bill Donahue on the Foxhole, a little comfy bunker over here where a lot of us hang out. And then when I finally went to that this communist platform called YouTube, it wouldn't give me Bill Donahue, Discerning Truths, Donahue Papa, none of those names. I tried every version of them. And then finally it chose for me Discerning Truths, plural, 534. You have to type in the whole thing or you're not going to find me on YouTube. If you mistype this and you put Discerning Truths, singular, I'm not going to come up. If you don't add the 534, I don't come up. I'm not saying that YouTube shadow banning me or anything, but let me tell you, it's not that easy to find. So when you find it, you just got to like it. Subscribe, cost you nothing. Subscriptions to me, I don't charge for anything I do. You subscribe for free. And I'll be here Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at noon Pacific time. Monday and Wednesday in the book of Daniel until we finish. And on Friday, I'll talk about stuff different. On Wednesday, I haven't talked to Neil yet about what we're going to talk about. I thought we exhausted spiritual gifts last Friday. We may still be on spiritual gifts Wednesday or maybe something else. But I blacked out the Tuesdays, and I'm just going to add in the day each week. If I'm going to be with Neil on Monday or Wednesday or Friday or what day it is, well, it won't be Monday, but it'll be Wednesday or Friday. I'll try to announce it what day I'm going to be there. But Neil's good to listen to every day of the week, 5 days a week, Monday through Friday. It's a blessing to be around, and I'm very glad to have become her friend. And I was very honored to do her wedding with her and Ron. And then when I'm done, I do a lot of notes. I present up a lot of text because this was originally for my grandkids. I want them to have the knowledge I've accumulated over 50 years of studying the Bible. But I also want you to have it. So I create a PDF and I'm going to upload it onto Discerning Truth groups on Telegram. Download it. Look up the verses. See what they say. If you want to listen to replays, especially if you're new, under Rumble I have channels. Okay, there's a Start Here channel. And it's a good place to go if you're not used to me. Or you're trying to go, where's this guy coming from? What's his education? What's going on? You want to start here. There's probably, 18, 19 videos in Start Here that kind of hit a bunch of different subjects. It's a good primer to listening to what I do. And then on YouTube, they don't use channels, but they have playlists. And the benefit of YouTube is you don't have to like each playlist. On Rumble, Rumble wants you to go in and like this is my Old Testament books playlist. There's a New Testament books playlist. There's a Start Here playlist. They want you to like them all. That's kind of a pain, but I didn't build the platforms. Rumble has a lot of good things about it. That's one thing I'm not happy with. I mentioned my good friend Michael Beatty, Miguel California. He's the busiest man on the internet. He's now doing Proverbs on Saturday, so he's 7 days a week 5 days a week. He's teaching the Bible in the morning. Right now, he's in the Gospel of John. He does a lot of interaction with this, his chat, prayer, worship music, does a short study and a proverb of the day. Saturday, like I said, is just a proverb, and then Sunday he's on with his wife Linda, and they're going through the Psalms, and that's besides his time spent making memes and meeting with the president and running a business. It's kind of, I can't believe how busy Michael is, but no, he's a good place to listen. But he teaches at 5:30 a.m. I live in Hawaii, so that in the wintertime that's 3:30 for me, and in the summer it's 2:30. You're not going to see me in Michael's chat often, but I do catch him on replay, and replays are there. If you miss somebody, just listen on replay. So with that, I'm going to try to get out of here, and then land this plane. And God willing, I will see you all on Wednesday. And thank you.